Hello and welcome to It's About Youth. I'm your host Farna Sheh. Now, as climate risks intensify and global sustainability goals grow more urgent, climate finance has emerged as a critical lever in driving both resilience and a just green transition. Right, the Climate Finance Summit 2025, CFS 2025, organized by the Perdana Fellows Alumni Association, aims to accelerate Malaysia's climate commitments while fostering regional and cross-sectoral collaboration. Here to talk about all this is Fanit Shara Kampon, Director of the Summit itself, and Nur Natasha Muhammad Foaz, Head of Partnership. Thank you so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you, Hannah, for having us as well.
Right, okay, let's get right into it. Right, let's first paint a picture, a landscape, if you may say. Why is financing climate resilience so critical in today's climate agenda, and how do you see it intersecting with the green transition? Whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, I can go first. So when we talk about financing climate resilience and why is it important, so first is to paint also the picture of how severe it is, which explains why it is so critical. So as we can see, as of last year in 2024, at a global scale, it recorded the warmest, highest temperature that we have felt so far. Even today also, we're sweating every day. The temperature is no longer the same, right? And for your information, last year, we have actually exceeded above whatever pre-industrial temperature when we were younger, when we were in 2000. We are now 1.5 degrees above that.
Yes.
Which explains every day today, right? The temperature is no longer the same as what we grow up. So with this rising of temperature, what does that impact, right? It impacts the ecosystem. So you can see now the rising of the sea levels, which impact us in terms of the flooding. We start having all this habitat lost. We also face all these wildfires and also these hurricanes. So if we look at the context of Malaysia, right, especially Malaysia, it's such a severe thing because last year, our economic loss is around 933 million. That is 20% increase from the year before, which was actually used to be 755 million. So with this kind of economic loss, this livelihood loss, it's such a no-brainer if we don't actually, if we sit back and relax things that climate resilience and financing the climate resilience is not an important matter. It's actually a pressing matter now because climate resilience is no longer a luxury. Right? It's actually a necessity, it's a priority for us, especially for the youth to be at front-facing that. So for this year as well, we also believe that financing climate resilience and the transition with the green transition that we are having now, right, the intersection, is because resilience is the foundation of sustainability. You cannot decarbonize or deploy renewable energy, having a solar plant, if tomorrow the flood comes in and all the infrastructure is lost. That's why the transition is really important, something that we have to talk about. And financing resilience means we finance the continuity. We finance the sustainability. We finance the future of our next generation. And that's why we need it now. And that's why it's very, very important for us to discuss.
So it's no longer about sort of putting out fires or mitigation, but thinking ahead, you mean, right?
Yes.
Thinking ahead of how we can make, tackling climate change a bit more sustainable and a bit more long-term, right? Right, okay. So when we talk about climate finance, right, many countries, including Malaysia, are struggling to mobilize adequate funding for adaptation and to channel it to climate resilience as well. So what do you think are the key barriers to effective climate finance today? A lot of people don't really touch on climate finance a lot, so it's interesting that this summit solely focuses on that.
Yeah, I can answer on that. So basically, Malaysia faced a lot of structural and also procedural bottlenecks. But I think one of the main challenges is, first of all, it's not sexy. It's not a sexy project. It's a low commercial return. So, for projects like this, for adaptation projects like this, it's long term, and it's indirect, and it's very hard to quantify it. So compared to mitigation projects, which are higher in return, lower clearer carbon metrics, and also in the shorter terms, it's less sexy.
Right.
Financial would not go with this. So second is our funds. The climate funds are actually very complex to be accessed. So, as a result, we have a lot of initiatives that are stopped at just the proposal state. So, in this, we have to discuss on how do we get the funds. So these are the challenges that we face. Whether, can we as a Global South country, how do we mitigate these funds? How do we get the access to these funds?
Yeah.
So these are the challenges that we face.
Yeah, and I think, to add on Tasha also, the fact that today we also have lack of data to support whatever things that we want to do. So for example, today, if we were to do Project Tebatan Banjir, do we have enough information of where do we face the hotspot of these floods? Which one do we prioritize first? Do we go for the coastal area? Do we prioritize the city center? I think the lack of data, and in terms of how we store the data in a very, I would say, systematically manner,
Right.
that is also a challenge. And we don't see that much of talent in that ecosystem as well that able to actually drive this kind of conversation forward.
Right.
So to add more on actually how complex these funds are, in Malaysia, we only have Think City that can access the funds, that have access to fund in global climate funds. Yep. We only have that in Malaysia. We have so much money, but only one that break through the barrier and actually access it.
Yeah, which explain the complexity of getting the fund.
Right, but is it just because it's not sexy to think about this, or is it there's lack of political will, or there's other things that we need to focus on? What is the stopping gap here that's hindering, because this topic is being talked about,
for many years, right?
For many years, and we have been highlighting this not just here in Malaysia but globally as well, how the temperatures are going up. So what is actually the stopping gap in terms of us getting that funding actually?
I like that question, First thing first, we live in a world where we cannot deny we live in a world where the economy and we focus more on money.
Right.
It's always profit making. We focus more on generating more revenue instead of looking at the livelihood of the people. So if you look at the global context in COP29, the outcome was a bit heartbreaking. Even if you can see with the new administration of Trump, where they pull up their involvement in all those climate-related initiatives at the global level, it's already a signal in terms of where does these international leaders see the priorities of climate.
Right.
So with that being cascade down to Malaysia, we do feel the impact because there's a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy, or even so many things are required to be able to apply for a funding, which by that time you want to apply for funding, you dah banjir, dah hancur, dah semua benda.
Okay.
It already took us few years.
Right.
And these such things have to be broken down. That's the first part. And I also agree with you, right? Political, yes. But if we look at the segment of who have the money to fund,
like financial,
right?
I think.
It's always financial institutions. So
Right.
if today you are a financial institution, a bank, for example, you want to have something that is having a return in terms of commercial, because I put money in bank, you put money in bank, and we all put money in bank expecting a return. So if they put money in this kind of adaptation project, how long can we get? When do we get? And how much can we get?
Right.
And I think I've also mentioned the fact that it's harder to quantify. Like,
it's
how
very hard
do
to
they
quantify.
measure it? How long can they get this return?
Yeah.
Is it going to be positive or negative return? So
Right.
that's actually the biggest factor
Right.
here.
Yeah, so I think both is true, to your point, and that is something that we being spoken almost every single day.
Right. Every single summit, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
And it's very hard to move, mainly because you can see the narrative from the global. It's when the global move that way, you don't have enough and adequate support from the ecosystem. But having said that, I think in terms of Malaysia context, we have more that we can do. Instead of just waiting for global to come and help us, right?
Right.
Our national willpower is also important.
Right. And we want to talk more about that. But let's look at, ensuring that financial flows like the one you mentioned just now. I understand, a lot of it is very profit driven, and a lot of this, requires financial institution to actually look whether or not we have tangible result or not. But what are some of the measures or ways that we can look at it to ensure that financial flows can generally support resilience and equity, and not just, mitigation or, profit-driven sustainability? Is there any other option out there that we can look at?
I think if we take ESG as the key driver for green growth, right? When it comes to metrics of how we measure this all this while the company sees ESG as a way of a tick box exercise for them to pass for certain things when it comes to their investment in their company or getting an X
Make sure you just
percent,
get it in the annual report.
Like branding exercise.
It's just something that you have to do for the sake of doing it when it comes to, I would say, protecting your company reputation. But we have to move away from that, right? We have to look at the ESG metrics, not just about, disclosing the emission of carbon, but it's also for them to actually expose what is the exposure of their company towards climate risk and investment.
Right.
It's not only about, what they have done, but it's also looking at, in the long term, how sustainable is your company if you do not do anything today. And I think those are some things that, as of now, it's not clearly being measured. Perhaps there's no clear measurement metrics, but there's a room of opportunity there.
Yeah.
Second is, I also think incentivizing the structure, have to shift how we incentivize. For example, now you can see government comes up with a lot more initiative related to blended finance. You can start seeing people like BPMB or Asian Development Bank start coming in and absorb the risk to be able to absorb the risk of this climate and support this kind of ESG growth in the company. So those are metrics and also help that we put in place that can actually drive more conversation.
Right.
Like Fanny mentioned, ESG, it's about ticking boxes and, it's for, this is the metrics that we have to achieve. But the thing about financial flows is that for it to work in a bigger scale, it needs the transparency. The data transparency must be there, and the strong governance must be there. And that's the reason why we need not just from one sector to collaborate in this, not just in the financial sector says that, okay, we have the money and we are measuring this and this is our ESG metrics. So we need governance also in there. So we need cross-sectoral. We need cross-sector.
And, when it comes to moving away from ESG, it's all about carbon. It's also about making sure we uplift the vulnerable communities, not just carbon saving. We have to look into the livelihood of the people as well.
Right. So thinking about it more holistically, more long-term for a lot of these institutions, as well as the cross-sector sort of cross-collaboration that you mentioned just now. And I think that's what Climate Finance Summit is going to address as well. We will discuss that, but right after this break. Hello and welcome back to It's About Youth. I'm Fana Shea, and today we're joined by Natasha and Fanishara to talk about the Climate Finance Summit 2025 organized by the Perdana Fellows Alumni Association. Right, in the first half we talked about, climate finance in terms of financing climate resilience, some of the barriers, some of the challenges and some of the solutions that, need to be addressed or need to be tackled when it comes to ensuring that financial flows are able to address climate change equitably. But now we want to talk about Climate Finance Summit, and that was the one thing that Natasha alluded to us before the break, which is the cross-sector collaboration bit, right?
Yeah.
So Climate Finance Summit 2025, as with previous years, bring together multiple sectors from policymakers to financiers to civil societies. So why do you think, this kind of platform, cross-sectoral platforms are important for shaping meaningful climate finance agenda? Let's start with you, Tasha.
Yeah. So basically when people think about climate finance, people think about capital. Right. But it's not just about capital. It's about coordination and also on collective efforts. So for example, Malaysia itself, we have the ongoing development of CCS, the Carbon Capture and Storage Bill. This shows the complex interplay with it. We have the policymakers that are responsible in drafting the legislation. And then we have the financiers that are expected and supposed to fund the CCS infrastructure despite the long process and despite the long written horizons. And then we have the civil society groups such as Rimba Watch, which have raised critical concerns that highlights the blind spot in this bill. So we need to have multiple sectors come around to ensure that all this transparency has been addressed. And so that when we share the table, the isolation is not there. And when there's no isolation, so the funding won't remain as fragmented or just misaligned. So yeah, so basically I think this multi-platforms, this multi-sectoral platforms will help to reduce the gap, to reduce in this funding gap, and to accelerate also the partnerships. And mainly it's actually also on building the trust. Whether do we trust this bill? Can this work for not just for the country but also for like you said, what's that, the community itself.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is actually very important when it comes to partnerships.
Right. So ensuring meaningful discussions
Yep.
are taking place.
Yeah, because you see, climate finance is not a single sector challenge, right? It's a ecosystem problem itself, right? So if we just listen to just a perspective of regulators only,
Right.
or just from the perspective from the financial institution, without actually listening to the NGOs who actually
Yeah,
receive
who are
that,
on ground.
and receive the impact directly from the communities, then you will see that the narrative and whatever that even the government is trying to do is going to be very one-sided. And it's very important for us to put everybody together, for us to have a platform where we appreciate co-creation of ideas, right? And it's just not about, like what Tasha says, it's just to really unlock the trust, a critical currency in climate finance as well.
Right. And I've been to this climate finance summit before. And this is the kind of stuff that we address. We have, for example, banks and regulators and governments and policymakers and youths as well to be in one place and to actually talk about challenges and nitty-gritty things that we usually don't address. So I think that's the main essence of the platform when we talk about Climate Finance Summit.
Because it's a global crisis and we share the same burden, but it's an uneven burden to every parts of the society. We have the government facing this. We have the communities.
Right.
I think we just don't want this marginalized community to be unjust.
Probably understanding each other as well in terms of the challenges and barriers they face to
one
move
thing
this
is
forward, right?
because youth is actually at the center of the consumer of this climate finance, right? They consume this information, so it's very important for us to provide a platform where we celebrate different idea and perspective, and let the youth be the one to decide and judge the information that comes in and validate the information, because these are the future of our country.
They are the receiver of
They
this.
are the biggest building blocks
Right.
to the transition, to a successful transition of a green transition that we envision.
Right. Okay, we'll talk about youth a little bit, but I want to know more about, how do you see Malaysia's commitment, like the National Energy Transition Roadmap, or the many ESG aspirations here, being advanced or challenged through platforms like this summit? I know we talk about cross-sectional, cross-sectoral, discussion, but is there any other way that this summit can help in terms of bringing Malaysia forward when it comes to advancing its sustainability goals?
So I am someone who are firm believers that ideas and policy will remain on paper, and it's going to be on the paper unless it's being communicated effectively to the mass. So it's very important where this kind of platform actually have a strong feedback mechanism. So that's why one of the things that this is the third year installment of CFS, and for the past 2 years of CFS, we have always produced a report that presented back to all our partners and to the governments and to the regulators. This is the feedback of the discussion, and we also give recommendation based on the discussion points, hoping that these points will be part of the consideration of the future improvement of the policy. But having said that also, for all the policies that the government has produced, it's very important that they usually have a dialogue. Usually it's a closed-door dialogue, right? But an open communication platform like CFS actually provide an avenue for people who are not part of the ecosystem. So we are talking about people who are of the mass media, of the mass. Why are we doing this? Why are we having this? Or even the students, they don't even know where to start. I would say this platform is it's a platform to start, right? But this year we also introduced new things lah. So in a sense that this year we have actually kickstart our initiative to produce our first ever youth written policy paper. And this year our focus on policy paper is on adaptation and private sector. How can we actually get our private sector to be part of this adaptation project? So this policy paper will also be part of CFS Highlight, where we'll also establish a booth to actually disseminate this information and as much as possible, influence and gather support for this policy paper, which will then be, sent to all the regulators and ministers for a closed door roundtable discussion.
Right. Seems like you guys have a lot on your plate.
A lot of new things.
Yeah, a lot of new things.
Because we want to actually create an impact.
Right, definitely.
So, for the past 2 years, we have always been a platform where we talk. So how long and how can we go beyond that? So producing papers is something that is will legitimize the discussion. We do have points to carry, and this comes from the youth and the coalition of the youth partner. It's not only Perdana Fellow. We have UKEC in the group. We have Majlis Belia Malaysia. We have UNICEF youth partners who are actually part of the supporting youth ecosystem as well.
Right. So I guess drawing on that, since we are on a show called It's About Youth, what unique perspective do you think, or solution do you think young people bring to the discussion of climate finance, and especially when it comes to localizing or innovating all these strategies? Tasha?
I think Fanny can
Fanny.
express on that because she is very good when we talk about youth.
So I think when it comes to youth, right, we have a lot of energy. Our moral compass is very tight. So we actually push, and on the principle of our moral urgency, we challenge the status quo. We push the uncomfortable question, and we keep the pressure for the bold and ethical financing. So that is the nature of youth and how youth can give a different perspective. And we are tech savvy for sure. Today all the youth are all on phones. Information grows really fast. They are our change agent. They are our change makers. We have to make use of them. And also, since the youth, they are not part of this technical, I would say technical sustainability term, they comes with grassroots knowledge. They know what happened in their hometown, how many times banjir, how many times hutan terbakar, how many times masalah infra.
Right.
I think the most important thing is for this summit not to just inspire them, in a day, but actually to equip them on the knowledge that they can use for the next decade. And I think because that's what youth is, they're the building blocks of the country, and that's the most important part with youth involvement in the summit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We are also youth.
Yep. We're also youth. ending. But yes.
Yeah, but okay.
Retiring.
Retiring.
Right. Okay. So, looking beyond August here, right? Because the summit is happening in August. What kind of long-term impact do you hope the summit will have, especially for youths, like you mentioned just now? So knowledge sharing is one. How do you foresee, this summit sort of changing or transforming, people who attend and driving, meaningful change in terms of climate finance and climate resilience? So
basically, the summit, we want a long-term impact. So it means not just we want to create pathways and not just a platform, like I've mentioned. So, possibly we want to institutionalize youth participations in the regional climate finance framework. I think the next thing that's important is to launch pilot projects, because that's co-led by youth people, especially around the adaptation, because we hear a lot on mitigation, right, Fanny? So we want more youth to be involved in adaptation.
Right.
And also we want this to be a spark in the policy shifts, and also in the ideation that the youth have, to be more inclusive, for youth to be more inclusive. And also we want to use the financing tools better for the ESG disclosure. We want for transparency for that.
I think it's also important to understand that youth is no longer just the listening party when it comes to this kind of difficult, uncomfortable question about climate change. The fact is real. We did not cause this. The youth did not cause this climate issues. It's being inherited. Right? It's being inherited from all those decades and years of carbonizations and whatnot. But it's very important for the youth to take a step forward to build and paint the new future that we are inheriting, so that we make sure that our next legacy, we minimize the risk and the loss to our next generation. So it's important to turn the youth perspective and the youth role from just purely listening to actually taking action.
Right.
So that's the hope that we want in the long term, that we want to measure part of our impact report. When a youth comes to CFS and when they go back with this information, will it spark a new ideation, new project, new adaptation initiative? Or perhaps one day in future, youth will be the funder of the adaptation project itself.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting for you to say that it's not the youth that caused it, you know, but they are the beneficiaries for this. And, you know, for them to experience all this, they also need to be involved. They need to be the architects of our futures, you know, because even though they're not responsible for this, but this is something that we have to face, and this is something that we have to be adaptable to it too. So, you know, they have to be, we want youth to be more involved in this, and we want a more inclusive discussion.
To be at the forefront of the discussion.
Right. I mean, I think to put it simply, you know, it's a platform or it's a place where youth can actually start thinking about how they can address it more long term, right? How they can find more sustainable solutions that probably would need some of this unique perspective, you know, the tech savviness, the unique ideas that they have to drive innovative solutions, and not just have sort of, like you said, just pen on paper kind of thing, you know.
We just want to go beyond that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Right, unfortunately that's all the time we have, but before we end this, do we have a little PSA for Climate Finance Summit, when it's happening, you know, what's going on, how the date and everything else that you guys are working on? So go ahead.
Yeah.
Any of the cameras.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe this camera.
So to all the youth, welcome to Climate Finance Summit 2025. We hope to see you at Securities Commission Kuala Lumpur on 7th of August, Thursday. We're starting at 8 and we're going to finish by 5:30 p.m. Oh, 5:30 a.m. lama sangat. And our royal keynote is from the Raja Muda of Selangor himself. We also have special presentation from the China ambassador team about their climate finance perspective, and will be closed by the Deputy Prime Minister Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Sri Haji Fadilah. So we hope to see you there.
Is registration still open?
Yes, still open.
Okay.
By all means.
By all means.
Okay, so make sure you go to the Perdana Fellow Alumni Association website. I think their social media handles would have all the information as well. So yeah, be there or be square, everyone. Right. I think that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for shedding light on such a very important topic that is usually sidelined, and it's very important that you guys are bringing it to light and that we can discuss it more here and also at the summit. Thank you so much, Fanit and Tasha, for
Thank you for having us as well.
For having us. It's an honor.
That's all the time we have. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.